Listen to better music and listen to music better. Welcome to True Tunes at 45 RPM, the short-form version of the ongoing conversation you'll hear on the True Tunes podcast and in the digital pages at truetunes.com.
Hello, I'm John J. Thompson, and I recently had the opportunity to catch up with a good friend and amazing artist, Robert Deeble. We talked about his long career as an independent artist, his work as a therapist, his thoughts on the role of art in personal and interpersonal healing, and a lot more. While that whole conversation will be available on the free side of our Patreon feed at patreon.com/truetunes, for this special 45 RPM episode, we have gathered several clips of that conversation related to his new album, The Space Between Us, which is now available for pre-order via Kickstarter. Spoiler alert, we're a little biased here. We would love it if you would consider helping him reach his goal, because we really want to hear this thing on vinyl. With all that said, here are some highlights from my recent conversation with Robert Deeble.
And I have this loneliness, it haunts me like a relationship, beauty that wells up inside of me.
Robert Deeble, it's good to, even if it's on a computer, it's good to see your face again.
Oh my goodness. It's been so many years.
I know, man. We're not getting younger.
No, we are not.
That's for sure. That's for sure. What keeps you busiest these days?
I run a full practice as a therapist. I'm a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And it's a group practice. So I have 4 employees that are therapists as well. And then as part of our practice, we are subcontracted with a health clinic to provide a mental health program for their low-income clinic. And a majority of our clients are immigrants that are looking for medical and dental and counseling resources. And so that takes up a lot of time. And then I have a beautiful family, which I just adore, and a very unprolific music career, which I adore.
London bridges falling down. We all look toward heaven from our bending bows, and I can hear the TV screen selling sweet Jesus to save all your pain. Well, if you never had to fall, you'd have no need for a savior at all.
Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop, the bower bend and the cradle rock. The bow breaks, cradle top, into God's embrace. You fall.
Do you find that if there's a Venn diagram and there's thoughtful, soulful art in one circle and helping people through therapy in another circle, that there's kind of an overlap as an artist and as a therapist. How do you see the work, the similarities in that work?
It kind of takes us back to that glorious period that we thought might be the future, and then it wasn't.
Right.
But, there may be absolute truth that floats out there in the universe somewhere, but our ability to really understand it fully is like Paul the Apostle said, we see through a glass darkly. And so we have a little truth, and you have a little truth, and somebody else has a little truth, but it's not perfect.
Right.
And as we come together in a community and we bump into different ways of thinking, that's where we get, I think, a little bit closer to something that is spiritually true. And if the word spiritual triggers some people, just more meaningfully true. And that is especially important in therapy, because in therapy, you cannot be the authoritarian role with a person. You can't tell them how to think or what to do, or, they may come to you initially like there's some power in the room, but you have to be very quick to create a mutuality in that. But yeah, we learn so much from our clients, and hopefully they learn from us too. And it's really the process of therapy is like being a Sherpa. You walk alongside someone and you agree to bear their burden with them. You don't take it away from them. You're not a rescuer, but you bear it with them. Good art asks as many questions as the listener does. And so does good theology.
Sure.
And that's the thing people, I think, forget about the more beautiful tradition of, say, the Christian faith, is that you ask Jesus a question and he'll ask you a question.
And then did you find that your art evolved and shifted as you got into that practice?
For sure. Although I'm so close to it, sometimes it's hard to know how. I think that basically getting to know my art through those questions, getting to know people through those questions, maintaining a sense of curiosity as to where we're going. I can't ask a client a question that I want to hear a certain answer from. I have to hold a certain curiosity of like, where are we going? And art has to do that too. I see that happening a lot in the studio with other musicians. I think any songwriter, I have a general idea of where the song is going. And I might even have an idea of what I think I want to hear and inviting somebody to play on it. And then they do something that I didn't expect. And it takes a minute to release that control and go, wow, that's powerful. And it's liberating because it's not all you.
I want to transition into talking about this latest project, and it's been something you've been working on for quite a while, it sounds like. And the first thing that strikes me is this thing has teeth. It sounds so sweet and nice. Tell me first about the genesis of it, the initial spark. Is it something that just kind of warmed up slowly, or was there a precipitating event that said, okay, this is now a spark that's going to lead to something, and I know what I'm doing here creatively?
Well, we're in such a mess right now. And everybody on all sides of the fence can agree to that as maybe the only thing we can agree on. So that has gradually sort of lent itself to some aspect of the record, just the polarized state that we are in our country and really the world. But it didn't necessarily start there. I think it's, in some ways, it started with sort of the general everyday breakdowns of relationships that we all are familiar with. I think one of the oldest songs on this recording would be a tune that I wrote. I do a lot of songs about, from a literary standpoint, a book that grabs my attention or whatever. So I wrote a song that captured the relationship of Pleasant and Sarah Carter's relationship from the Carter family. And what grabbed me in David Lasky's graphic novel of their story was something I could relate to where music was such a powerful distraction to Pleasant that it basically ruined his marriage.
And that song is Orphan Song, right?
Yeah. And the idea of the song is that Pleasant is running around trying to grab all these orphans, these songs that haven't been finished or these songs that haven't been cataloged. And his wife is like saying, look, we got a family here. What are you doing? And I think that's if we're going to be honest, at the end of the day, I think that's one of the haunting things that all songwriters in relationship have to deal with, whether they deal with it successfully, unsuccessfully, whatever. It's just there. And I can feel that as well. And so I was really fascinated by that story, and yet it's a bit of a sad story.
Sir, can't you see the branches of this tree with all the fruits of our labor? Could you follow me into the harvesting? These songs hang low, sweet and tender. Pleasant, don't you leave me for another song. We've got little mouths to feed, and our hearts are on the run. If you stay with me, you know I'll sing along. Oh, Pleasant, don't you leave me for another orphan song.
That COVID hit us. And then this whole concept of being apart, and just the disorientation of that. And I remember anytime I'm totally disoriented by world events, I write an instrumental because I just can't put words to it. You know, when 9/11 happened, I wrote 911 to Orphan Wells, just an instrumental. But I ended up writing this instrumental on guitar that was just in this absolutely bizarre time signature that everybody on the record has been trying to figure out. I mean, Stephen Hodges took like 2 weeks out to try to figure out what the hell I was doing. And I'm still not sure we know. But
it's kind of appropriate when you think about how it felt to live through COVID and not know what time it was, not know what day it was. It's like, I don't know what, I'm just going for a walk. I'm eating breakfast and it's 3 in the afternoon. Who cares? Right?
Totally disorienting, but also there was a sort of a renewal of like, okay, the relationships I have, they really need to matter. And then with all of, everything politically that kind of came from there and on, and the lack of core values that people can come together in, that as that began to emerge and people believing all kinds of different misinformation, and I'm sure I fall into that too, that we just all have our own different set of facts and our own different, whatever, and we can't see eye to eye or even have a conversation that holds grace and curiosity for one another.
Right.
And so watching that just happen in my world around me, coming from a guy that was trained from a postmodern way of thinking, that various opposing different angles of thought actually bring us to a closer truth. And we're seeing that just kind of fall apart, where people can't hear each other, talk to each other, that kind of stuff. It just broke my heart. Mm-hmm. And I think where I am now, and probably where you get the most, forget the word that you used, but
felt like you were biting into something.
Yeah, is just when I'm seeing so many people that I have some sort of relationship to, or in the past or whatever, good people start to lose their own deeper set of values for something they've taken on, something they maybe want really bad to be true, but in the process, they're beginning to lose their love of neighbor.
Yes.
I feel helpless watching this happen. The signs of something not so good is just happening everywhere.
We long for sun from an endless night. We pray for rain where our hearts run dry. We feel the pain of this great divide. That's the space between you and I. Just a boy like me. Your ideology get stuck at odds between the dialogue. What I call love, you call political. Where I bend the knee, you storm the Capitol. You storm the Capitol.
When I think of protest music or musically trying to address these things, I go to either kind of angry folk music or punk rock or something more aggressive. And this music is very delicate. It's very measured. It's very melodic. I mean, Pleasure to Burn, for instance, it's like I'm listening to that when you sent it to me the other day, and I'm getting the references, but I don't have any way to read. I was listening in the car. I was listening while I was working, but I kept going back and like, is this, there's something familiar about this, but I didn't have time to sit and read it. And then when I look at the liner notes, I'm like, oh yeah, it's Fahrenheit 451. Like he's writing this beautiful, graceful ballet about literally burning books and burning ideas and destruction. And my youngest son, who's in art school right now, he's a big fan of science fiction and these books. He's discovering them for the first time. And he was recently saying, I wish Christians read more science fiction. I wish they had this in their imagination. I wish they had these tools, because this has been out there for a long time. Do they not see this? And so that was really interesting for you to take something as dark and what we would normally think of as heavy, but then treat it with such delicacy.
Yeah,
that's an interesting approach as an artist, I think.
And maybe it's how I read the book. Again, my postmodern reading. Everybody's going to read a book a little bit differently, but there's a deep hopefulness in the book that the main character, who is burning these books, who's basically following the authoritarian rule of his government, suddenly starts to thaw. And it starts with just, a silly conversation with a young girl that asks questions, just like you said in the beginning of this interview, asks him questions that he can't answer. And it ends with him faithfully trusting the words in his ears of an older, wiser man that's helping him get through this ordeal as he turns from his idolatry of power and starts to move towards authentic relationship. And that's the hope on the album for me.
Walk with me beneath the orange lit sky, like kerosene and the matchstick in your mind. Do you mind if I asked you about the moon? I've got time, I'm just 17, skipping like a loon. And have you held a word more beautiful than birth? Through the fire suit and seal, it calls your very worth. Now in beauty could you yield this theocracy of fear?
I'm not a good protest singer. I don't have it in me. I'm a hopeful singer. I want to see something get a seed planted in someone that bears some fruit that changes down the line. So maybe there's a prophetic objection to things. And I think you see that on the cover of the album, the title of the album, you hear it on Not On Your Team, the song.
Right.
But it's laced with this, it's threaded throughout with this deeper hope that we will get out of this mess.
Right.
And it's not one side wins versus another. It's not that binary type of thinking. It's like, what have we become?
He draped himself in the American flag. He wore her wealth like a body bag. Silver tongues of liars run from rivers into streams, pulling up around the statue of your liberty. Are you sublime like the morning? Are you mysterious like the deep? Are you complex like the forest? I am not as you seem. I am not on your team.
Ric Hordinski, great partner on this thing, producing it with you and playing on a lot of its strings and guitars. And,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean,
that's been a fun relationship.
Hand in glove on this thing. It feels like, without losing your sense of artistry and your voice, it definitely feels, you can feel his presence on it throughout it.
Yeah, and there's a combination of coming together of his team and my team, and it's been a really interesting sort of project. Rich and I talked about doing this record probably 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember exactly how many years, but he called me up and said, let's do a record together. And I just couldn't make it. It didn't make sense to me because he was in Cincinnati, I was in Seattle. And logistically, it just seemed impossible. This is pre-COVID, right?
Right.
And I'm like, let's just bookmark it. Maybe we'll figure it out somehow. And then he ended up contributing a track to Heart Like Feathers. And then later, when I was tracking Beloved here in Seattle, I reached out to him and asked him to do a string score for the title track.
Oregon stars shine down like northern lights, illuminate the wind of road we tried, and we've cried for such a long time. Feels like for the first time it's gonna be alright.
And that became a game changer. When we got that score back, I realized this is how we need to start working it. So literally from that point on, we finished Beloved with just that one song, had his score on there. But as I started to do these other songs over the last, 6 years, whatever, I would partner with Rich just around the string arrangements, and we would come together and create string arrangements together, or sometimes he would just come up with a whole thing on his own, and then I would have my string players here in town start playing those parts, and then we would get excited, and the next one we would do a little bit, and we kind of get the general direction of what we wanted, and then we hand it off to Rich, and he would further embellish it. And long before we ever started in the studio, he was kind of like our fifth Beatle, our George Martin behind the scenes.
Like the bird that fell from the wire, fell as she sang like a beautiful lie. And I was the house, troubled by fire. You were the priceless thing in the attic of desire.
This is really subversive. It's not subversive of the other person. It's subversive of the principalities and powers that are hovering like a cloud trying to get us to resist the other. And I found that really compelling.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, for me, it can't hinge upon, hey, which way did you go in this election? And agreement or disagreement on the person you chose to represent you, but rather what's happening in you. Are you becoming like something that you don't want to become? It's no mystery out there that I'm not a fan of the rhetoric of the current president. But my issue has always been really any leader that requires your allegiance is problematic for me. That somebody that doesn't just want your vote, but wants your allegiance is, there's a darkness to that.
Oh, yeah.
And so if that allegiance then requires you to begin to disparage the least of us,
right,
those on the margins, where does that bump into your deeper value system that you said you had? And I'm not judging people. I'm just asking the question, are you becoming something you don't want to be? There is a vulnerability that happens in relationship, that the different type of strength shows up in that vulnerability. That's what the title or the opening track is about.
Right.
Is the taking the book The Hidden Life of Trees and using that as a metaphor for relationship. That we're taught to have this ideal of strength as an individual, that we are strong and powerful as an individual, and we rise above others and all this sort of stuff. And this arborist very beautifully shows that the strength of a tree is found in the forest, not the individual tree. We all strive to be so strong, and yet when we allow vulnerability in relationship, that's where real strength really happens.
I wanna be deep-rooted in graceful coterie, as towering conifers extend a canopy. And in the dim of darkness, I think I finally see the blessed ties that bind us, like the forest from the tree, 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 like the forest from the tree.
That's going to do it. Thank you, Bruce Brown, for pulling this together. Thank you again to all of our Patreon members for continuing to support what we do. That's all for now. The Run Out Groove is coming. If you dig the show, please subscribe and spread the word. Also, please leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our email list at truetunes.com, follow us on Facebook at TrueTunesNow, and find and follow our weekly Spotify Gallery Stage mixtape. You can find me on Twitter at John J. Thompson and on Instagram at TheOnlyJJT and at TrueTunesMusic, and you can support the show through our patreon.com/TrueTunes community or via a one-time tip linked on the show notes page. So tell your friends about the show, post it on your socials, and let us know what you think. Thanks.
True Tunes at 45 RPM is produced by John J. Thompson and Bruce A. Brown for Gyroscope Productions and is intended for the private use of our listening audience. The contents are protected by US copyright law and are the intellectual property of Gyroscope Productions, with the exception of songs or clips that are from previously copywritten materials. Everything on this episode is used by permission or under fair use provisions. Thanks for listening. Cheers. We'll see you next time.